Hey everyone, this is Lesley Rieland with Greater Than These International, and I just want to offer a quick encouragement today to keep things simple. So I was reminded of this recently when someone asked me what I thought about the courtrooms of heaven. And when I thought about how to answer them, I realized that the Lord has never really led me to think much about them at all. It's not to say that the experience wasn't amazing for those who have seen the courtrooms of heaven, or that those praying through the courtrooms of heaven do not have positive effects or good experiences with that. But the Lord has never led me to think that it's necessary, and He's always kept me on a path of simplicity. I hope no one thinks that I'm picking on the courtrooms of heaven, but it's not just that. It's, a number of things. You hear many people today, for instance, when they're going through deliverance, they gravitate towards a certain, if I can call it a formula, or information overload, where they think they need to know all this different information. For instance, well, we better find out what was back to this generation and whether this person had ancestors involved in this. And it's just information that I find frankly unnecessary and overcomplicating the situation. I want to first bring up Matthew 23:19, and here Jesus talks about a basic principle of realizing which is greater. So here people were swearing by gifts upon the altar, and Jesus basically tells them, okay, don't you understand that it's the altar that makes the gift sacred in the first place? So you fools, which is greater, the gift on the altar or the altar which makes the gift sacred? Hebrews 6:13 basically shares the same kind of principle. And here it talks about when the Lord was swearing to Abraham, he had no one greater to swear by. So it says, since he had no one greater than himself to swear by, the Lord swore by himself. So again, you find this distinction of understanding what is greater. So how do I apply this to this situation? The way this applies is when we look at, for instance, the courtrooms of heaven. I have to ask that same thing. Which is greater, the courtrooms of heaven or God who created the courtrooms of heaven? And the answer, I hope, should be obvious. So if I am going to strive to know anything, I'm going to strive to know the Lord more, for He is the creator of all things. He is above all things. He sustains all things. In 1 Corinthians 2:2, we find that Paul has this same attitude of simplicity. Now, Paul had amazing experiences. Obviously, he was taken up into the heavens, amazing revelations, but yet, despite all that, he keeps it very simple. And he says that he resolved to know nothing but Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Really, everything that we need was finished at the cross. So when you look at generational curses, for instance, when you look at what we need for our healing, when you look at what we need for our faith, when you look at the power that is in prayer, it is not so much through any of the created things or things that have already been completed. It is finished. That's what Jesus said on the cross. It is finished. So what we need to do is focus on Jesus Christ and His finished work. I just want to encourage you that you don't need to know step number 1, 2, 3, 4, and some people will make it, step 20, and it gets so complicated. You don't need to know the exact words to a certain prayer. You don't need to know the right formula or the right root, so to speak, unless the Lord shows you. There is a danger in taking one experience that the Lord gave you and that you saw results from, and then making a grand doctrine that you have to do that in every experience. It's our human nature to do that, but we don't need to. So when we look at Jesus healing the blind man, he simply spit in some dirt and rubbed the mud on someone's eyes. So why are we not rubbing spitty saliva mud in people's eyes when we want to heal them? Well, I can venture to say it's maybe because it doesn't seem very spiritual. So we have to be very careful not to unnecessarily gravitate towards spiritual seeming things, thinking that there's some extra power in that. We just simply need to know the Lord, know His voice, and be led by Him. So we don't need to rub mud in everybody's eyes. We don't need to go into the courtrooms of heaven and say a certain thing in order to get our prayers answered. Just as Jesus said, simply believe. And if I'm going to pull any verse out of the Bible, it would be that. Simply believe. He says it's as a faith like a little child. And little children don't need to know all the other information. They just need to know their Father. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope it encourages you to keep things simple.